Hello, and welcome to this eCampus News webcast. My name is Andrew Barber. I'm a senior contributing editor, and I'll be acting as the moderator for today's presentation, which is sponsored by Marketo. It's titled Enroll and Advance Students with Engagement Marketing. Before I introduce our two speakers, I just want to take a few moments to highlight a couple of items. First, today's event will be recorded. In a couple of days, you'll get an email from us that has a link to the recorded event, and you'll also be able to download a PDF of the presentation from that same email. And second, please do ask questions. You don't have to feel as if you have to wait until the end. At any time during the presentation, if you have a question, just type it into the Q&A box on your console and hit the submit button. I hope we'll have about 10 minutes at the end when our speakers can answer your questions. We also have a chat function which can be launched via the brown group chat icon at the bottom of your screen. Use the chat to talk among yourselves or to contact me or the eCampus News team with any technical issues or other concerns, but please don't use the chat function to ask our speakers questions. They just won't have time to monitor the chat. If you have a question for them, please use the Q&A panel instead. So with that out of the way, let me introduce today's speakers. Vijay Chadaga is the Director of Product Marketing at Marketo and leads the team responsible for bringing the company's consumer engagement marketing products to market and driving business performance for the B2C segment. Vijay has more than 17 years of experience at large software companies such as SAP, Oracle, and IBM, and at fast-growing cloud businesses such as ServiceMax and Cast Iron. Our second speaker, Patsy, is Senior Assistant Director at the George Washington University School of Business. Patsy led the procurement and implementation of Salesforce and Marketo, oversees admissions operations, assists with recruitment initiatives, and serves as a member of the admissions committee. Prior to joining the GWU MBA admissions team in 2011, she worked in enrollment services for a nonprofit organization in higher education. Welcome, Vijay and Patsy. It's an honor to have you here today. Vijay, why don't you get us started?
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Vidya Chadaga. Super excited to be here presenting on this key topic for higher education. Before I get started, just a quick note. I would love to have a conversation with you guys on Twitter. So as much as I can't chat live with you when I'm presenting on the call, you can absolutely call me out on Twitter at VidyaPC or at Marketo and hashtag MarketingNation. With that, let me tell you what we plan to cover in this hour. I figured we are from different universities, private schools, public schools. We have different functions and roles we play in our companies, in our teams. So why don't we level set by talking about the current landscape, some of the challenges we have in today's environment, and then move on to talking about engagement marketing for higher education. I think the best part of the presentation is the next part, which is having a fireside chat with Patsy Torres. She is a phenomenal leader in the space, and we are thrilled and excited that she's able to join us today. And then, of course, we hope to leave some time for Q&A at the end of the session. So that's how the hour will pass. So without further ado, let me get started. So declining enrollment is something which is declining enrollment is just it's one of the biggest concerns. It's a reality that institutions are living in today. For example, in spring of 2015, the overall enrollment decreased by about 2% from the previous spring year. It's just crazy that 2% translates to a lot of money. Enrollments decreased, if you look at the graph here, and I apologize that the numbers are so tiny, but some of the things that stood out for me are enrollments decreased among four-year for-profit institutions by 4.9%, and enrollments decreased for the 2-year public institutions by 3.9%. It's interesting as community colleges are really struggling after the economy comeback. Employment rates have started to heal itself, and so jobs are taking a priority over continuing school or going back to school. And decrease in enrollment basically means that it's translating to a decrease in the net tuition revenue, and for many institutions results in an unexpected resource deficiency. And that's a challenge. That's a reality we live in today. The second reality is that we have dwindling retention. There's 1/3 of all students change institutions at least once during the course of earning their degrees. And this is a study from the Student Clearinghouse. And this report is pretty interesting because if 1/3 of the students are changing, it just means that you have to have a conversation with them. You just don't have, you can't stop with just recruiting the right talent. You have to make sure that you're keeping them so they actually complete the curriculum, right? And then, of course, there's a third reality of the high time to degree completion. Only about 60% of first-time, full-time students entering American colleges and universities graduate within 6 years. I don't know about you, but if I put the previous slide and this slide together, it seems like, hey, first off, 1/3 of them are switching, and then the ones that are staying back are taking longer to stay in the curriculum. And the flip side of seeing it is the longer they stay in the curriculum, the more time they have to think about switching. So it's just, it's not a good situation. And frankly, the fourth reality is it's not just the education sector, but pretty much many institutions are faced with competition and tight budgets. I mean, look at Raffaello's analysis here. The data, the quote is pretty self-explanatory. Now, with education budgets constantly on the chopping block, it's no surprise that higher education institutions have been trying to find cost-effective ways to market themselves better, right? And then there's this flip side, right? The four realities I presented so far is just, it's the nature of the game. It's the nature of the beast. But today's social, mobile, digital world has made it really hard to create, to engage with the students on an ongoing basis. Look at this changing student behavior. Every student on a daily basis is bombarded with 2,900 marketing messages. This is a study from Super Profile. Granted, it's not all from schools, but they are brands. And how do brands stay top of mind? Not just the 2,900 messages, but 80% of the student journey is self-directed. What I mean by that is Forrester has a study where they say that 66 to 90% of the buyer's journey is self-directed before they interact with you. So a student is doing all the research, asking friends, counselors, asking neighbors, parents are asking their friends, there's social media that's involved, there's a lot of research and references that go into this, the play here. So even before the student engages with the brand, they've made up their mind. They've formed preconceived notions about a particular school or a university. And the last stat is 87% of the students demand a meaningful interaction with your brand, with your school, right? At every stage of the interaction, they're saying, I need something that's meaningful, that's contextual, something that's relevant to my experience. If I'm interested in cooking, talk to me about a cook club. Don't talk to me about a technology club, right? It's about knowing the student and engaging with them in ways that matter to them. So keeping all this in mind, given that there's all this noise, that the student has self-directed journeys and the student wants a personalized interaction at every point, given that there's dwindling retention and getting a student acquisition is tough and budgets are tight, given all of that, in this digital era, we need to deeply engage all students and alumni. That's the mantra that marketers have to be living by. And really, in this charter, if you look at this slide and you see these bold words, It's marketing that's taking the charge, that's taking the lead, building a bond with these students and alumni and becoming the steward of their journey, right? So to that end, I want to just present I'll build the animation so we can see the entire screen. This is the student engagement lifecycle, and you can map it to your university, to your school, and maybe think about certain scenarios that apply to you. I want to start with enrollment or recruitment, as some of us call it. So the student engagement lifecycle obviously begins with student recruitment, and Patsy on our call today would vouch for it because she's the senior director of that department. It's about attracting the right talent, about getting them interested in the talent in the school, looking at the candidacy, looking at the information that's requested, trying to see what kind of communications they are having with the school, the application process itself. Of course, there's registration and different flavors of registration. There's lots of events that happen. And then finally, there's the acceptance. And the student actually becomes a part of the university. You see, if you pay attention to the image, you really don't know enough about this person. All you've done is, all that's happened is this student has joined your school, your institution. What happens is during the curriculum, as they progress, if you look at the second kind of the section here, after they've made class selections and registered for extracurricular activities, they're looking at internships, or they're applying for apprenticeship, or they are getting into clubs and participating in events. That's when you know a little more about them. You know, the pixels are beginning to come together, and you're able to formulate an image. You're able to engage with them because you know a little more about them. And then finally, as they graduate, and then, you know everything about them. You know they've been with you for 4 years, or who knows, 6 years, based on our stats from the previous slide, right? 4 to 6 years. And then they are maybe interested in advanced courses. Maybe they're interested in some kind of career counseling. And then the last two activities are where the university starts making money again, with donor activities and alumni activities and donations and so on. So that's like the broad stroke of student engagement lifecycle. I call it the engagement lifecycle because bear in mind that the one thing that's common across this entire lifecycle is constant engagement. And that's a good segue into the concept of engagement marketing. You know, engagement marketing is all about building personalized, meaningful, and lifelong relationships with your students and alumni. And, you know, really to make it very easy for us to remember, I have the ABCDEs of engagement marketing. It's as simple as engage students and alumni as individuals based on what they do, continuously over time, directed towards an outcome, and everywhere they are. So in the next 5 slides, let me dive into each of them and give you a little more about what each of these principles mean and how you can take advantage of it. So the first principle is, engaging people as individuals. Now, universities need to engage with prospects or leads, prospective students, new and existing students and alums as individuals in a one-on-one way, right? We know that each student is different, with different levels of readiness for college level classes, different interests in terms of the area of studies, different financial needs, different parental preferences, and so engaging them as individuals will dramatically improve their experience with your college or university. And more than anything, I feel like although this is, if you apply this to student acquisition, it's important not just for the student, but also from your perspective, from your university's perspective, that you get the right student, because you're trying to attract a particular persona, a particular kind of student that fits your brand, that fits your goals and what your school stands for. So engaging them as individuals will help you do that. The second is engage students based on what they do, right? And this is going back to how we all live in a digital world, and today's students are from Gen Z, and they do their shopping online, they buy music online, they study online. You can gain tremendous insight into who a particular student is and what their interests are based on their online behavior. So these behaviors can then be used, right, to gauge and engage with these prospective students much more effectively. So just don't lean on traditional demographic criteria and information. That kind of segmentation helps, it's just painting a part of the picture. It's never going to tell you what this particular person has actually done or is interested in. So that's why you need to engage them based on what they do. The third principle is engage students continuously over time. And frankly, this principle is the best suited for higher ed. Most of the higher ed institutions, you want to nurture prospective students and start building relationships with them at least 2 years prior to them making the decision about which school they want to attend, right? So this nurturing and continuous relationship building needs to continue not only while the students are going through the academic process, but also stretch beyond graduation. And then, obviously doing so increases the probability of dropouts and will improve the satisfaction through the academic curriculum. And then, there's going to be word of mouth and donations and the whole 9 yards that come from a student that's an evangelist of the school. The next principle is engage students directed towards an outcome. Now, as a marketer, your goals are clear. Unless you're a nonprofit, most of us are here with the intention of making money and thinking about revenue and profits. Bring in the right students, make sure they are prepared and set up for success so that you retain them and then build advocacy, and you can raise funds by giving alumni the opportunity to give back. That's an outcome that you want to drive towards. One outcome could be you want to drive the student to completing the curriculum. As we know, 1/3 of them don't complete the curriculum, right? Or they switch from your school to go to another school. So you want to avoid that. And that could be an outcome that you're shepherding the students towards. Another outcome could be, being a part of the sports teams or engaging in activities outside of school. So they get a chance to give back. So recruiting new students, getting them in the door is just the beginning of the relationship you have with your students. So from the time they walk through the door to the time they graduate, there are so many reasons to keep them engaged, right? And this is exactly what we mean by think about the outcome you want to direct them towards and just smoothly engage them so you are able to help them on this journey. The last principle is engage students everywhere they are. Today's students, as we know, have access to more information more easily than any other generation before. So as they seamlessly move across devices and sites at a frantic pace, you need to keep up, right? Be it accessing the learning management system from their laptop, or posting a tweet from their iPhone in the class the next hour. Well, hopefully not when the professor is speaking. But as a marketer, if you are relying on traditional marketing or trying to engage with students on your terms, you're probably not going to hear them often. And remember, the word here, they, is super important. This is about engaging students everywhere they are. It's so important that you understand what channels are the preferred channel for your students, and you go back and talk to them in that channel. And of course, there's tons of examples, but in the interest of time, I will move on and just say this is an example, just a logo slide of some of the universities and schools that have taken advantage of engagement marketing and are thriving on the principles that I just spoke to you about, the ABCDEs of engagement marketing. So With that, I want to say, just to double click into one of the logos you saw on the previous slide, we do have Patsy Torres with us, and she can tell the story so much more better than I can. But there is, for those of us who weren't able to attend the webinar, you have this slide to look at, and you can share it with your colleagues. With that, let's just switch gears and open up a fireside chat with Patsy Torres. She is the Senior Assistant Director of Graduate Admission at the School of Business for George Washington University. And Patsy, thank you so much for joining us, and we are super excited to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. I did want to start off by just providing everyone with a general sense of kind of what's been happening at the School of Business. So we actually kind of started in this whole marketing automation world about a year and a half ago, and it's been a great deal of fun. A lot of the examples and stories I will share are very specific to our MBA admissions programs. And so keep that in mind when we're talking about some of these examples. The goal was really to pilot this marketing automation with MBA admissions and then look to scale that across the School of Business. So we're really excited with some of those key successes that we've had thus far. I think one of the really great things about this whole process is, you know, it's not only changed how we do things from a systems perspective, but it's also changed really kind of how we think in terms of marketing. And I think for me, that just has been so exciting. So let's get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Patsy. I think just having you here brings a perspective that our listeners are waiting to get, and your insights and thoughts and comments hopefully will be jotted down and taken far and wide. With that, let me start with the very first question, and I realize there's a slight lag between the slide that gets presented and what I'm saying, so I apologize. But the first question is, please tell me, what's the motivation behind marketing automation at the School of Business for George Washington University? It seems like marketing automation is, frankly, till I got into this role, I wasn't sure if higher education universities and schools and that vertical is ready for marketing automation. So please tell us more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know that we were ready for it as well, but, you know, I think when we started off and started this process, there were a couple of things that were really important to us. And so as you can see here, I actually created this little wordle of all of the systems that our team was actually operating in. And to me, that's just kind of mind-blowing. So one of the big things was really being able to, I think, increase efficiency across the team. We were essentially operating in 8 different systems. Many of them did not communicate or speak to each other. You know, we were using an application system. We were using a prospecting tool to communicate with students who were interested in our program. In addition to the prospecting tool, we needed to use something like a MailChimp to really pretty up our emails. We were using a system to schedule our emails. We were using another system to host online webinars and information sessions. We were using Excel spreadsheets, which is just terrifying at this stage of the game. And so oftentimes I think there was a great deal of overlap between systems. We weren't being efficient with the resources and staffing that we had. And so for us, you know, one of our major things was to be able to do all of these things from kind of a prospecting perspective in one tool and system. Another thing in terms of efficiency is that, you know, as many of you I'm sure do, we host over 100 in-market events. We're doing in-market events, we're doing online information sessions, we're doing things on campus. And so for us, it was really important to kind of utilize our staff time and resources to the best of our ability. And so we needed to find a tool that was able to help us. As I'm sure many of you are aware, you can't just send one email to invite a student to an event, right? There is an invite, there's a second invite, there are event reminders, there are, thank you for attending, there are, we're sorry we missed you. And so when we were doing it in the systems that we currently had, it was just taking us so much time, and we just weren't doing it well. There are other things like, really being able to track all of the data that was associated with events, right? What was the cost of the event? How many people attended? Really being able to identify that data in metrics to help us make better informed marketing decisions for the next recruitment cycle. I think, unfortunately, we just didn't have a lot of that data, and so, we were doing what we had done in the past simply because that's what we had done. And I think the other thing was really the data integrity piece. If you have unclean data in the system, you're really not able to, I think, be effective with your marketing. So for us, we were really working with lists that were coming from, a number of different stakeholders. We were working with a lot of third-party vendors when we were hosting in-market events. So we really needed to make sure that we were finding a way to make sure our data was clean and uniform. Some of those examples are, sometimes you're getting lists from events where, things as simple as gender are listed as F or female, or your current state is listed as California versus CA. And so for us, it was really important to develop systems and processes to make sure all of that information was uniform. One of the, I think, other things that was really important for us was this whole idea of engagement marketing. And, we were really looking to, nurture campaigns to help us kind of increase enrollments. So obviously, as I'm sure many of you have similar goals, the idea is always to increase enrollments, and we needed to essentially increase the number of prospects that we were engaging with the same number of staff and essentially, the same resources. And so that was, I think, something that was really important to us when we were looking at marketing automation. We wanted to make sure that we weren't engaging all of our students in the same way, regardless of where they were in their student life cycle. And so these nurture campaigns was something that was really attractive to us because that's something that would help us achieve that goal. The second thing is this idea of, targeted communication. I think, at the outset of this, we were essentially email blasting, and so we wanted to be much more targeted with who we were talking to and what we were saying. I think, particularly being in the MBA space, one of the big things we talk about is really fit, right? So, we talk about how MBA programs across the U.S. Can provide you those hard and soft skills that you're looking to get out of an MBA. But your job is really to kind of do your research and find the program that's a right fit. And so we needed to leverage that messaging by using the data that the students we were interacting and engaging with, using that data to kind of educate them on how we were potentially a great fit for them. Some of those examples include, being able to, see students who are clicking on our website who are interested in maybe nonprofit management and leveraging that fit. So we have this great certificate in nonprofit management that a lot of our MBAs will explore. This may be something that you're interested in. And then the last thing is this idea of lead scores. It was a great way for us to identify how students are interacting with us, and essentially who's interacting with us, right? So even from a demographic perspective, I think, one of the things we're trying to do here at GW is become more than just a mid-Atlantic school, right? So maybe we're using lead scores to, essentially attribute points to students who are coming from California, students who are applying from Washington State. So those were things that were kind of at the forefront of our mind as well. And then finally, this idea of really being able to understand and track a student's entire lead life cycle. Because we were working in so many different systems, we really weren't able to track a student from cradle to grave. And that was something that I think was an enormous disadvantage for our team, and we couldn't use the data and the engagement to really target and market to students the way we should be. So the idea of being able to track all email communication, to track their engagement with us at in-market events, or really being able to identify what they're talking to our admissions representatives about at open houses or online information sessions. So one of the big things for us was really this idea of, being able to track the entire student lead life cycle and being able to fold that in with some of the lead scoring so that we could better target email communication. This is kind of a much less complicated version of what our lead life cycle looks like. But I wanted to kind of map out, what the various stages were in terms of that prospect base. But we definitely kind of, have, those students who we're remarketing to or students who've stalled in the process and developing a game plan and a nurture campaign to really address all of those concerns. So not a short answer, but those are all the things that we were looking at.
Perfect. Wow. That's just amazing, and it's a lot of work. Here I am thinking, if you're tracking students and their engagement across the board, I'm hoping you're able to do some kind of revenue attribution for which channel is working and, what your next steps are and so on. But I'll hold off till we, have the questions that's presented first. Anyway, the next question for you is, how has marketing automation changed how you do business at your school? I mean, yes, you went with marketing automation. Yes, it did a lot of things. But how has it changed the way you do business?
That's a great question, and it essentially has changed everything for us. I would say one of the big wins has very much been in kind of that online advertising, digital marketing space. One of the great things that Marketo and kind of marketing automation has enabled us to do is really to use real-time personalization. We don't have to go through an entire admission cycle to tweak our marketing campaigns for optimal performance, and that is something that's great for us. We're also able to be so much more specific with our targeting in terms of our landing pages and, those different student populations. One example is, we launched a digital marketing campaign that was targeted at military vets. GW is a very military-friendly school, and so, really being able to develop an entire marketing campaign that is targeted at military vets and, having them go to a landing page where they, are able to resonate with someone who looks like them or has a similar background, which we find is pretty effective. The other thing has been, again, that ability to test our ads, right, and see what is resonating with prospective students, that population, identifying where we're generating the largest number of conversions, what's working, what's not working. And, this is an example. We've been able to, I think, allocate marketing funds much more intelligently across our various marketing campaigns and channels. In this industry where we're constantly being asked to do so much more with smaller budgets and less and fewer resources. So for us, that was something that was just massively important and a really big win. The other thing was this idea of nurture campaigns. So I've already mentioned this quite a bit, but this is definitely something that I think is just so important to how we do business now. We've essentially gone from zero nurturing to a 32-step nurture campaign, where we're able to engage students who are raising their hands and indicating that they're interested in the School of Business. Before, we couldn't do that, right? If we were nurturing and engaging students, we were nurturing and engaging everybody. And we were doing it regardless of where they were in kind of the student life cycle. And so that made us very ineffective. So essentially with these nurture campaigns, once we've gotten the content up, we're literally able to keep it running, evaluate how it's performing, and then make changes where necessary, which I think is great from kind of a staffing and resource perspective. And then finally, this idea of really being able to develop targeting messaging. And a lot of that is very much based on the behavior of our students as well as kind of their demographics. So with marketing automation, we're able to do things like track where they're going on our website. What online ads are they clicking? What events are they attending? Who are they engaging with? And all of those information points are so important from an educational standpoint for our staff in terms of really being effective with their job. So we're finding that, student actions are so much more important than what they're communicating to us verbally, right? And I think many of you will find that, particularly those of you who, sit on admissions committees or you're going through the interview process. I think oftentimes prospective students, tell us things that they think we want to hear. And so for us, going through this process, and watching what students do versus what they say has enabled us to be so much more effective in terms of conversion. And I think for us, that has definitely been a very big win for us. And then finally, reporting. I think that this is something that, unfortunately, we couldn't do a lot with. We couldn't analyze data to understand what channels were performing, what programs were delivering, and that unfortunately forced us to operate and function in a vacuum. And so, for us, with marketing automation, we're able to identify what channels are delivering the most awareness, what's generating the most application, what's driving enrollments, which is really important, I think, for a lot of that senior management. Those are the questions that they want answered. So it's helped us kind of provide senior management with the information they need to understand why we're making certain decisions from a marketing and a recruitment perspective. One example is, us doing some international and domestic travel, and why are we traveling to certain markets or areas? One example is kind of us traveling to South America and attempting to develop and build a pipeline there. And now we can actually tell our dean that, hey, listen, we have these 10 enrolled students from South America, and these can all be attributed to those in-market events that we hosted back in September. And so I think for us, it's enabled us to be much more successful in terms of stakeholder buy-in, not only kind of amongst our team, but when we're engaging with senior management. I think, arming them with the data has probably been, a massive win for us. So yeah, I think, awesome. those things are some of what we've seen.
Thank you, Patsy. Just the going from 0 to a 32-step nurture campaign, I have goosebumps just hearing that. That's amazing. And with a smaller budget, I know in our past conversations, you've spoken about improving efficiencies as being a goal for you. You've said, hey, we have tight budgets, I have less team members, I have to measure marketing, I have to prove the worthiness of my team, and it's all about doing more with less. And can you talk to that? Can you tell us how did marketing automation help you on that quest?
Yeah, I think, one of the really big wins for us is, from a recruitment standpoint, we're just in so many different countries and cities and hosting events on campus and off campus. And so the event build-out was something that helped us. So at the outset of this, we have not increased any of the staff members on our team. So for the past year and a half, our team size has actually stayed exactly the same, but we've been able to do so much more because we're working in the marketing automation space. So in terms of events, we literally host all of our events in Marketo. We work in and host over 100 in-market events. That doesn't count our online webinars, which we essentially do every week. That doesn't count our on-campus information sessions or open houses. And as I said before, with each one of those events, there's so much that goes into it from a communication, a marketing perspective, and we literally just kind of plug and play now. So at the outset of an admission cycle, we will identify what all of those events look like, and it will literally take us maybe 2 weeks of a staff member just doing that to get all of our events up and running, which just never would have been possible and absolutely not what we did a year and a half ago. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes, but, one of the big things was, we're just currently doing events for our MBA programs, and we're actually looking to push that across all of our specialized master's programs. And to be quite frank, I was a bit nervous initially about this, but now, I'm so confident that we'll be able to kind of roll in these specialized master's programs and likely still do it with the same staffing that we currently have, because we just work so much smarter now. The other metric, which I think is crazy and I still can't believe, is when we started this, we were essentially working with about 30,000 leads. We're now working with over 150,000 leads, and we're engaging with them so much better than we were before. So, again, the idea was we have to increase enrollment. We're not increasing your resources or your staffing, but we're really doing a great job, I think, when compared to where we were a year and a half ago, with being very strategic in terms of how we're engaging with students, and we're not doing email blasting. We're able to identify who are cold leads, who are warm leads, who are hot leads, and this really educates us in terms of who we should be engaging with and when. And then finally, this idea of scaling, right? So again, we piloted with MBA admissions. The idea is, again, to reduce the number of systems our staff is working and using across the School of Business. And I think really being able to develop systems and processes that are the same for all of our programs. Because what that does is, again, it enables us to work smarter and I think do our job significantly better. Currently, we've piloted with MBA admissions. We have added 4 specialized master's programs at this time, and that's all being done by kind of our Marketo person, which for me, and I think probably our senior management, is a really big win because they don't have to worry about the additional cost of staffing. So yeah, those have been some of the efficiencies I think we've seen.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Patsy. I feel like the next question has to be around metrics. It just, so many conversations I've had, people come up to me and say, well, all this is great. I'm sold on engagement marketing. I am sold on why I should be doing this, and, the various conversations around the proof in the pudding. So end of the day, it is what's working and how are you measuring it. So to that end, my question is, can you describe some of the key success metrics since implementing marketing automation? And these success metrics, if you can elaborate on, why those metrics, did you consider other kinds of metrics? How did you benchmark? When did you start measuring? And, finally, just the metrics that have worked out for you and that works out for proving the worth of marketing automation.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I think when we started this, we had a pretty clean slate, right? I think for us, we were in a position where we could just go up from where we were. And so I think for us, one of the big wins was the ability to customize, probably similar to, what many of you have at your school. We didn't have a whole lot of IT support. We didn't have a massive marketing team. And so we had to do a lot of this stuff on our own. And so I think for us, the customization piece was just massive. I think we found that current student stories and alumni stories are really what resonates with our prospective student base, right? Students want to know that they can achieve the goals and objectives they're setting out with your degree, and they want to hear about these student stories where they see themselves. And so for us, it's just really enabled us to be much more effective with our email communication and messaging, because we can really target our student base and be so much more specific with our engagement. And for that, these are some examples of some of the landing pages that we're using. So, we've targeted some of our military vets, looking at students who want to engage specifically with our part-time professional MBA program. So really being able to adjust the messaging has been something that has really enabled us to be much more effective. The other thing is really being able to identify leads via kind of engagement and being able to track data. We recently started a new partnership with Blackboard, and they're helping us with some of that lead mining. And so we essentially are just able to go into Marketo and quickly identify those leads who we have characterized as warm or hot leads. And what this does, obviously, is it creates a high potential for conversion. So we're, again, able to meet those objectives that include increased enrollment numbers. And the other great thing is really being able to track all of the marketing channels that our students are engaging with us, right? The website, the multi-city fairs, the on-campus information sessions, our visit programs. Everything is in the same tool, and it's really being powered by kind of that same platform. The other great thing that we were looking to do was really increase kind of click rates and conversions, right? It's not enough to have students kind of, just look at your ad. We need them to act. We need them to kind of begin to complete RFIs. We need them to open up those email campaigns. And one of the massive changes that we've seen is if we talk about scholarship dollars, we get students to open up our emails. So we actually saw a scholarship email campaign. We saw open rates at about a 57% rate, which we've never seen before. And what we were then able to do was kind of readjust our nurture campaign and find ways where we could talk a little bit more about scholarships, so that we could get students to continue to open those emails and engage with us. And then, again, I've talked a lot about this idea of efficiency, but that was something that was just so big for us. So from that event standpoint, one of the things I haven't talked about was that dynamic content piece. And given that we're working with so many programs across the board, sometimes some of the messaging is the same across programs. We just need to become a little bit more specific. So it's been great to kind of reuse some of the same email templates or campaigns in the system, but being able to tweak it enough so that we're engaging the appropriate student. One example is that we have over 15 different specialty areas that we offer our MBA students. Most of those students are required to participate in things like 12 credit hours, or, we have world-class faculty teaching all of those electives. So we can kind of pull a lot of those commonalities, but then also specifically speak to, what the differences are for a finance elective as opposed to marketing, and what that means on the tail end from an employment perspective. So we've just been able to do so much in such a short time frame, which I think has been fantastic.
Such a pleasure to hear you talk about all of this. I feel like I don't want you to stop, but thank you. The next question is my last question to you, which is, because I have to leave room for others to ask you a question as well, and I see a few of them coming in. I also encourage you to post your questions in the Q&A panel. But my last question to you, Patsy, is what advice would you give fellow marketers in higher education? Of course, there's the good and the ugly, so go for it and tell them what you have to say.
Yeah, and I think everyone can kind of see this in terms of how we've done things here at GW, but again, I think many of us are just living in this world where we're asked to do more, increase enrollment with significantly smaller marketing budgets. And so we just have to be much smarter about where we're spending our marketing dollars. And I think having a tool that can analyze and track data the way, Marketo is doing for us, we're really able to, I think, arm ourselves with the data and the knowledge we need in order to be successful. The second thing is really this idea of being able to track student behavior across their entire student life cycle. It just has literally provided us with so much information and helped us from, I think, a very strategic perspective. And finally, that idea of engaging students beyond enrollment, right? We all probably have conversion plans for students from the time they're admitted into the program to the time they enroll. But it's also important to keep those students kind of going through and retaining them as they make their way through the curriculum. So how do we begin to do that once they're actually students at our institutions? So yeah, a lot of work, still a great deal of work left to be done, though.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Patsy. This was just amazing. And for those of us like me who couldn't get enough of Patsy on this call, we have a video. It's just a 2.5-minute video. It's on YouTube. I should have put the hyperlink here. I will do it before we share the slides with you guys. But if you just go to Marketo.com and look for George Washington University, or just Google George Washington University video, this will come up. It's a phenomenal video that you can share with your boss, with your colleagues about the success that Patsy and her team have seen with marketing automation. And so with that, I want to thank you guys for your time and open it up for any questions and answers. And while the questions are coming in, Patsy, thank you so much. It was just phenomenal. It was great. And hopefully we have a little more dialogue before we call it a wrap.
My pleasure.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Vidya and Patsy. That was a really interesting conversation. We have about a little less than 10 minutes left, and we do have some questions to get to. So why don't we turn to those and see if we can get through them in the remaining time. Patsy, let's start with a really quick question, which was, just listening to you talk about what you've achieved in the last, I think you said, year and a half. It sounds like tremendous strides you took, and not surprisingly, someone in the audience wants to know just how big is the team that you are working with that allowed you to do all of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually are a team of 10. We've had a couple of staff members leave over the past year and a half, so I would say realistically we were probably doing this with a team of 7 or 8.
Okay, great, thank you. And so why don't I come back to Vidya. Could you talk about, within the higher education market, can you talk about the different kinds of partners that Marketo works with and just give us a little more detail on that?
Sure. So I know I didn't take the opportunity to talk about Marketo, but Marketo is basically a marketing automation software vendor, and we provide engagement marketing as a platform for marketers. And if you, I'm hoping you can see this slide, but the engagement marketing platform that we have is basically, it's got the platform itself, which has, all kinds of cross-channel communications, and there's planning, and there's analytics, and the whole idea of having an engagement marketing platform is that you can have the students and the alumni information all in one place if you want to. It just becomes the single record of truth for from lead to alum kind of thing. And there are various partners, as you can see, that plug into the platform. We've got technology partners and services partners: Illusion, Blackboard, there's Hootsuite, Printing for Less, Cvent, and Fathom. And I also want to touch on some of the things that Patsy said. Patsy was talking about how they used a particular vendor just for email marketing. We've seen that people do that. There are schools and universities that like to do that too. they would go ahead and maybe use one of these peripheral complementary solutions and plug that into the engagement marketing platform so that, this platform becomes the epicenter of all things related to the student, and then you can use other solutions from partners to complement it and complete your task or your campaign.
Okay. Great, terrific. Well, Patsy, why don't we come back to you? A question about, during your presentation, you talked about the fact that you can track engagement for various activities. Are you also able to attribute revenue to each of these channels?
Yes. We're still working away at that, but yes, you absolutely can. So that is kind of one of the next steps for us is, I think now that we've gotten a better handle on what we're doing, we know what we're doing, the next step is really being able to attribute dollars to each one of, the events that we're hosting, so that we know, hey, listen, we're spending, upwards of $50,000 for in-market recruitment events, and what does that look like from a student generation perspective, and do those costs make sense? So that is absolutely something that we're working towards, and something that you can do with marketing automation, and particularly, definitely what we can do with Marketo.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And I'm just going to stay with you, Patsy, for another question, which was, obviously higher education budgets are pretty tight, and so, getting buy-in from upper management to do something like marketing automation. What did you do when you went forward to make your case for marketing automation? What kind of metrics did you use? What kind of arguments did you put forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think for us, what we were able to do is, we brought all of the appropriate stakeholders to the table. And I think a lot of it was an education process, right? It was identifying what are we currently doing, what can we do in the systems as they currently exist, and then really being able to, I think, propose that value add. These are all the things that we can do from, I think, a marketing automation perspective that will reduce and make staff time significantly more efficient. We won't need to allocate nearly as many resources, and we can just be so much more smarter and strategic about how we're doing things. I think, one of the big lessons learned was because we were working in so many different systems and we weren't getting the information and the data we needed to be smart, there was a significant value add in really being able to do all of those things, and then I think be able to take a step back and say, okay, now how can we be, significantly more strategic in terms of how we think and how we do things? I think, unfortunately, a lot of the time, most of us just kind of need to get our job done, right? And we don't have a whole lot of time to sit down and actually think. And I think being able to utilize a system and a tool like Marketo has really enabled us to do that thinking, which has just made us smarter marketers.
Okay, great. We probably have time for maybe one or two more questions. So I'm going to stick with you, Patsy, on this one. And as we've heard, you've done an awful lot in the last 18 months or so. As you look forward as to what you're going to do in the short term and long term in terms of marketing to students, what's next for you guys? What do you see coming down the line?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is centered on being much more strategic. So I think we're at a point where we're kind of sitting down and looking at what are the next 3 or 4 priorities that we can kind of knock out in the next year as we move forward. Some of that is centered on identifying, what do our student personas look like, right? We definitely attract I think a certain kind of student or a student who's interested in particular subject matters. So identifying those personas and really being able to leverage that data to be smarter with the type of marketing that we're doing, right? So we know that a lot of students who are interested in GW, particularly in the MBA space, are also very much interested in kind of that NGO, nonprofit space. And so for us, it's really being able to, I think, be smarter in terms of the type of information and that education process for those prospective students through our digital marketing ads, through our website, through our email communication, and continuing to get more and more sophisticated in terms of how we're doing things.
Excellent. Well, we have gone through our entire hour. It's a fascinating question. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have left today. If you asked a question and we didn't get to it, feel free to follow up. I've put Vidya's and Patsy's email up on the screen. Feel free to contact them directly with any follow-up questions that you may have. And so as we wrap up, I want to thank Vidya and Patsy for really an excellent presentation and a conversation. And I'd also like to thank Marketo for its support today. And so a final reminder, we'll send out an email to everyone on the call today when the recording of the webinar is ready, and you will be able to download a PDF of the slides at that point. So that wraps it up for us today. Thank you, and this concludes today's webcast. Goodbye.
Thank you.